Greetings, candidates, and welcome to the ICT class. The topic is the internet. Today we will study the ISPs, that is the internet service providers. The syllabus is not clear on the scope of what we need to cover in studying the internet service providers. But in today's lesson, we're going to learn how the ISPs connects one to the internet service providers. Now, the ISP is a service, a paid service which allows one to connect to the internet. Because unless you have a specialized line, other than a telephone line, then one cannot directly connect to the internet using the normal telephone line. And indeed, candidates, we all know that the telephone line was not designed to connect people to the internet. It was originally designed to transport voice. That is a frequency modulation in the range of the voice tone. And telephone servers only know how to start a conversation from a telephone number. So when it comes to providing internet services, then the normal telephone number may not be useful unless one resorts to a special service, because generally it is not possible to have communication between more than 2 points when you are using the normal telephone line. So the internet service provider is an intermediary which gives one access to the internet using a number which one can enter and which enables a connection to be established. So do you understand? Internet service providers. So how does the internet service provider connect one to the internet? Now, when you are connected to the internet through the internet service provider, communication between you and the internet service provider is established using a simple protocol called point-to-point protocol, the PPP, the point-to-point protocol. This is a protocol making it possible for two remote computers to communicate without having an IP address. So a PPP allows two computers to do what? To communicate without an IP address. However, an IP address is necessary to be able to go onto the internet, because the protocol is used on the internet. The protocol used on the internet is the TCP. The protocol used on the internet, the protocol used on the internet, I'm talking about the protocol that is used on the internet, is the TCP, the TCP IP protocol. And this protocol, candidates, makes it possible for a very large number of computers which are located by this address or by these addresses to communicate. So communication between a user and the service providers, or a user and a service provider, is established according to the PPP protocol, which is characterized by a telephone. Number one is characterized by a telephone. Then it's also characterized by verification of username. You can't get onto the internet without verification of a username. Then there is also login. One has to do what? Has to log in, and also the verification of a password. Verification of a password. So do you understand, candidates? Communication or getting internet or access to the internet requires several things. I've talked about a telephone. And this is a special telephone. It's not the normal telephone we know, because the telephone that we use is was designed to transport voice or frequency modulation in the range of a voice tone. Then the telephone servers only know how to start a conversation from a telephone number. So unless you resort to a special service, generally it is not possible to have communication between more than 2 points. So the internet service provider comes in as an intermediary. Connected to the internet by specialized lines. It is the internet provider that is connected to the internet using several lines. Otherwise, it would take every user, everyone going to the internet, to have several lines to have access, and that will be ambiguous. So that's why we have internet service providers who offer that services at a fee. The internet service provider is an intermediary between the people who want to access information on the internet and the internet. The normal telephone lines that we have cannot access data information on the internet unless one has a specialized line. So it's not possible to do what? To have communication between more than 2 points. So then, the ISPs, the internet service providers, or the internet service provider is one who comes in between, because the internet service provider is connected to the internet using many specialized lines, which then give access to the internet using a number which one now can enter. The one using the internet can now use it to do what? To get connection. A connection is then established with the internet service provider. Do you understand? Do you get the point? We've explained how the internet service provider connects users to the internet. We've said that when you are connected to the internet through the internet service provider, communication between you and the internet service provider is established using a simple protocol, the point-to-point protocol. The point to what? The point-to-point protocol. This is a protocol making it possible for two remote computers to communicate without having an IP address. But we've also said that an IP address is necessary to be able to do what? To be able to go onto the internet, because the protocol used on the internet is the TCP/IP protocol, which makes it possible for a very large number of computers which are located by these addresses to communicate. And therefore, communication between the user and the internet service provider is established according to the point-to-point protocol. And the point-to-point protocol, we have said, is characterized by a telephone, by a verification of username, by login, and verification of a password. Now, once a user is connected, who is now then connected to the internet after verification of the password, when you are now connected into the internet, after the password has been verified, then the internet service provider lends you an IP address which you keep for the whole duration that you are connected to the internet. However, this address is not fixed. Why? Because at the time of the next connection, the internet service provider gives you one of its free addresses. Therefore, different because that depends on its capacity. And it may have several hundreds of thousands addresses. So your connection is therefore a proxy connection because it is your service provider who sends all the requests you make. And it is also the service provider who receives all the pages that you request and who returns them to you. So you access the internet through the internet service provider. You don't get internet directly. Whatever you send on the internet goes through the internet service provider. What is sent to you also comes through the internet service provider. So that's why, candidates, when you have internet access via an internet service provider, you must pick your email on each connection because generally it is the service provider that receives your email and it is stored in one of its servers. So in brief, that's what we can say about the internet service provider. I hope you've understood the whole point. The syllabus does not allow us to go into the details. What you need to understand is how it works basically, and that was the purpose of today's lesson. Thank you. Bye-bye.